What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mile High Hockey, brought to you by our good friends at Mountain High Appliance. And this will be, unfortunately, our last show for a little while. Drew Spivak with me. Appreciate him and Mike Evans rolling along all season here on Mile High Hockey because we heard from Avs President Joe Sakic and GM Chris MacFarland yesterday. That's the end of the season press conference. And in hockey, Drew, once you hear from these guys, we will not be hearing from members of the Colorado Avalanche, unfortunately, until September. Kind of the reality of that press conference is a long offseason is here.
Yeah, and it was a very ominous tone to that press conference. Like I thought that was kind of one of the things that stuck out the most to me is that, like many of the fans and even some of the media members, like you could tell the disappointment in their voices the way that thing started. By the way, the way that thing started.
Yeah, go watch the first 10 seconds if you haven't seen it.
Dude, that was unreal. Like I literally thought we were about to get a bombshell right out the bat when they're talking about, today we had to make the decision to let go of a really good hockey man. So it's been a lot to this organization.
And a good coach.
A good coach.
Said, and a good coach.
And a good coach. I was like, oh my God, are they about to fire Jared Bednar?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we let go Ray Bennett, which we can get into that. I think that was the right move. Yeah. That was the move to make for this franchise in that press conference, but just a weird start to that thing. But I guess I appreciated the fact that they were just as stung by this loss and heartbroken by this loss as everybody else for Avalanche fans were. I think that's the thing that kind of stood out the most to me in that press conference.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was in the room and I thought it was raw, honest, emotional. It did make me feel a little bit better, Drew, as a fan that hey, the president and the GM are just as gutted by what happened in this series as the rest of us. So yeah, let's talk about that. And let's talk about kind of this notion that it's not about Mikko. It's about the Avs. I don't think Joe Sakic can get up there and say, I can't believe Mikko burned us, right? Like he's not going to say that out loud, but is he right in a sense of like, we're also focused on Mikko because it's a script you can't write. I mean, a hat trick in third period of game 7 from the guy you traded. Are you kidding me? But also like, is using Mikko almost like a cop-out for the Avalanche coming up short because Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle, Marty Necas, Ryan Lindgren, all these guys you traded for, none of them really had very good series. And oh, by the way, Cale Makar maybe had his worst series ever as a member of the Avalanche. Is blaming all this or only talking about Mikko letting the Avs off the hook? And is that kind of what Joe Sakic was relaying yesterday?
I think it is. Yeah. I because you could say the Avalanche, like I think a lot of people want to say, well, the Avalanche lost that series because of what Mikko Rantanen did in game 7 in that third period. That's a reason why they lost it. It's not the reason why they lost the series. I will go back to this day in and day out that the reason the Avalanche lost this series was because their power play stunk and Jake Ottinger was just better than Mackenzie Blackwood, especially in the last 3 games of that series. That's why they lost. Yes, the Mikko thing was a factor in this thing, the way he played in that third period, the second period that he had in game 6, those are 2 of the main reasons or 2 of the reasons why they lost. But
2 4-point periods.
2 4-point periods.
Yeah.
But where was Mikko in the first 4 games of the series? Like it was kind of a microcosm of what Mikko Rantanen was as a member of the Avalanche. He would go through some spurts where you're like, wait, where's Mikko at? Is he even playing in one of these games? And then he would just go on an absolute heater, which is what he did in game 6 and 7. But to me, I think it's just Joe Sakic kind of reiterated a lot of things that I thought going into this is like, listen, we had the team to make a deep run in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It just didn't work out. Things didn't go their way. I love that he didn't blame the officiating. He didn't blame kind of the flukiness of a couple of the games. He just said, listen, it just didn't go our way. Dallas ended up being the better team, and they won the series. That's kind of the way I looked at it the whole entire time.
Well, and Joe also said, some years it always stings, but some years it stings a little more. And he said this is one of those years because this was a team like the 2022 Cup team. They thought they could hoist the trophy, and instead they're done in round 1. Let's be honest. Like the year after they won the Cup, even Nathan McKinnon admitted, hey, we didn't have the horses to do it, and they lost to Seattle in game 7, and the whole Nichushkin thing happened up there in the Pacific Northwest as well. But like Joe himself said, like, I'm not going to sit here every year and pretend like, oh, we could have won the Cup this year. But this was one of those years they could have won the Cup, and that made it sting even more. And then Chris MacFarland said, quote, we blew it in 3 third periods, Drew. Game 2, game 3, game 7. You had a third period lead. You lost all 3 of those games. I mean, for the GM to say we blew it, for the president to say this is about us, we came up short, we had the team and it stings. I think there was a lot of accountability yesterday in that room as well.
There was, yeah, and I love the honesty from both of those guys and Chris and Joe yesterday. The way saying, because he's right, they did blow it. You have a 2-goal lead with 12 minutes to go in Game 7 of the first round. That game was in the bag. And
look at what the odds were for the Stars.
Yeah.
I mean, like they were like plus 1,600 to win the hockey game.
Exactly. So I did love the accountability from it. And I just kind of go back to like, who do you want to blame for this loss? Do you want to blame Chris MacFarland for trading away Mikko Rantanen? Do you want to blame Jared Bednar? Do you want to blame Ray Bennett and the lack of the power play? Or do you put more of the onus on the players that were brought in, the players who were already on this roster that just, quite frankly, didn't get the job done when they needed to get the job done? That's who I ended up putting more of the blame on in this series, was that just the players on the ice, especially in that third period, they just didn't get the job done. I don't know if there was anything different that Jared Bednar could have done to improve their chances to win that game. Just things happened in that game. The players just didn't get the job done.
Yeah, and it was a frustrating Game 7, and it was a frustrating whole series because you and I talked about it last week. They could have won this thing in 4 or 5. Yeah. And not only did they not even win the series in 4 or 5, they lost in 7, which is tough to wrap your mind around. All right, you mentioned Ray Bennett. Let's talk about that. And let's talk about, was that a big enough change? Because I think fans, a lot of fans, myself included, wanted there to be a pretty big change. I had called for the dismissal of the GM. A lot of folks had called for the dismissal of the head coach. Is firing Ray Bennett good enough, Drew? Because obviously, if you're watching Mile High Hockey, you probably know who Ray Bennett is. But the casual Avs fan may not even know who this guy is. What I'm saying, it did a big enough axe fall to just have the only change be one assistant coach getting fired?
For me, yes, that was the only move that I thought needed to be made. I was not even close to thinking that Chris MacFarland needed to go. Definitely didn't think Jared Bednar needed to go. I thought if there was a move to be made, it was Ray Bennett, because it wasn't like the power play was just a struggle in the playoffs. We kind of seen it a lot throughout the regular season.
Yeah, they had stretches where they got kind of hot, but it was a frustrating watch. All 80, or not all 80, most of the 82, and then all 7 playoff games.
Now this is kind of the weird part is, we talk about Mikko Rantanen and what he could have been for this team on the power play, but remember, before Mikko got traded, the Avs were producing about a 20% rate on the power play.
Yeah, not good enough.
After the trade, they were 32%. So yeah, they got on a roll there. They started doing good things, but you could kind of see this was a thing. You watched a team like them on the power play. There was no kind of creativity. It was kind of the same thing over and over again. I like to watch a lot of what Edmonton does on the power play. Yeah, they change things up on the fly all the time. And you've got stud players on the power play, much like the Avalanche do. You never really know what Edmonton's going to do. That's what makes that power play so lethal. I mean, you and I were just talking about before the show, like how Edmonton just kind of has like a couple of superstars. They just kind of find a way to get the job done. Well, a lot of that is because of what they do on the power play. I think they've been the best power play in the league the last couple of years. The Avalanche have the players on this roster to be a better power play. They just, unfortunately, as good of a coach as I think Ray Bennett was, he just wasn't getting the job done. I think that's what we keep coming down to. This whole thing is just certain people didn't get the job done, and I think that was the right decision to move on from Ray Bennett instead of going, to Jared Bednar or Chris MacFarland.
Yeah, going nuclear. I still think Bednar was good to be safe. I still think MacFarland probably should have been dismissed, but I'm softening a little bit on that take after hearing from him yesterday. I did think that, he's just as bummed as you and I and everyone watching. Let's spin this thing forward, though, Drew, because I did ask Joe Sakic if he felt like the championship window was open the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And he told me, you can go watch it on my Twitter at PetersonWill. Hey, anytime you have Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon, the championship window is open. That quote has gotten a fair amount of traction because it's a good one from the boss in the sense of, hey, those are 2 of the 3 finalists for the Ted Lindsay Award, which is voted on by the NHLPA as the best player in the league. And Joe made it pretty darn clear to me that, as long as we have Cale and Nathan, this window is still indeed open.
Well, I think one of the bright spots that we've kind of figured out over the last part of the regular season into the playoffs is we got clarity on a couple of key issues. Number one, we know what we have in Gabe Landeskog now. Mm-hmm. We know that Gabe came back and looked
better than anyone could have ever expected.
Any of us. Yeah. I mean, listen, I was on the train of like, he's never going to play again. Right. And then when he came out, I was like, well, we're never going to see the same Gabe. He's going to be like a third line guy from here on out. No, I think he proved that that's not going to be the case. Now, we'll see how that holds up over the course of an 82-game regular season as opposed to, 4 playoff games.
Sure.
But we got clarity on that. So now all right, you're going to have your captain back. You know what his cap hit's going to be, that you're going to have that on the books. but you also got clarity in the fact that they're not going to be searching for a goalie. They know who their goaltender is now for the next several years. You know what you have in Mackenzie Blackwell. You're not, holding your breath every time a shot comes on goal when you got Alexander Georgiev in net. So I think having those two factors, you look at the rest of this roster, there's not a lot of holes on this roster that they need to fill. I know they've only got about $8.7 million in cap space to kind of work with. You got to figure out what you're going to do with Brock Nelson, what you're going to do with Ryan Lindgren, if you're going to bring those guys back or not. But there's not a lot of holes, I think, on this roster that need to be filled. So for me, that gives me optimism that, number one, that it's going to be a very quiet offseason for this team. We're not going to see very many moves if
they're very much going to run it back.
Absolutely.
Was the vibe I got yesterday.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's that. And I think that we are set up for a ticked off Avalanche team with a roster that is going to be run back. That's going to be a wagon next year. This team is going to be very, very, very good and not going to put themselves in a hole like they did this year to where they kind of had to climb out of being a wild card team and you end up being the third seed and you're not going to end up with a first round matchup in Dallas like you did this year. This team should be competitive for the President's Trophy next year. So that gives me a huge source of optimism. Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're going to be really good. The problem is I really wish we were talking about game one, Avs and Jets tonight. Like, I love your optimism. And I do feel the same way. It's just hard for me to get like super excited about next year on May 7th because Drew, the Nuggets play tonight. So we'll all be locked into that. But can you even bring yourself to watch Jets and Stars? I'm not so sure I can. I kind of keep wondering that myself. Like, I've been watching, Edmonton, Vegas, and a few of the other games, but I don't know where I'm going to be watching Dallas and Winnipeg, knowing what not necessarily might have been, but probably what should have been with the Avalanche playing the Jets in this
or even Avs Blues. I mean, they were 1.6 seconds away from it being Avs Blues. And it's going to frustrate me because I'm going to watch me like the Avalanche would beat the Jets in this series. Oh, they would score 5 goals a game on Connor Hellebuyck. And oh, by the way, had the Blues not collapsed in the last 1.6 seconds, game one would be at Ball Arena tonight. I know. It'd be going down to Ball Arena for the Avalanche and Blues. Okay, we can't think about that too much, but wanted to thank Chris and Joe for taking the time to chat with us. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Mike Evans, Matt, Sean, everyone who made Mile High Hockey possible this season. And we'll be back. I don't know when, but some point this summer, the Avs will do something that will be worthy of another episode of Mile High Hockey Podcast. And until then, thanks for tuning in. Go Nuggets, go Avs, and we'll see you in a couple months.